All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're on to the approval of the committee of the whole minutes from October the 4th. 2023. Any additions or changes to the minutes? I will pass that with by unanimous consent. And now we are on to presentations. Okay,
I think we are.
okay. So presentation for Save Our Old Forest campaign by Nina Newton.
That's right.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody, and thank you very much for having us here to talk to you about this. The Save Our Old Forest campaign is a creation of the Arlington Forest Protection Society, which is based up in Hampton, working with the citizen scientists of Southwest Nova, which basically means a bunch of us to go out and look for lichens and other things. I know that the town of Annapolis, well, doesn't own a whole lot of woodland forest. However, I did do a little bit of homework, and I see that the very first item in your climate change plan is about preserving and conserving and enhancing biodiversity and ecosystems. And I think probably this town of all towns knows how vulnerable it is to the effects of climate change beyond the boundaries of the town. So protecting forests in the surrounding area is still a benefit to the town of Annapolis. So yes, there's our little logo. I don't know how many of you are aware of quite how much clear cutting has happened in Annapolis County. But this is a map that shows, this is from Global Forest Watch, and it's a map of Annapolis County basically. And those pink patches were 2001. Those were where we had forest cover loss. So that means basically those areas had been clear cut. Those are what it looked like by 2021. So in 20 years, that's the amount of clear cutting that happened in Annapolis County. And that has a tremendous impact on biodiversity and on climate change, on carbon storage. Essentially, when you clear cut a forest, you don't just take away the trees and the carbon that's stored in them, some of which might go on being stored as building material, but quite a lot of which will be released pretty quickly. If you make it into toilet paper, it goes back into the atmosphere quite fast. But also something people don't know as much is that in the forest floor stores about half of all the carbon that a forest stores. And when you clear cut that forest and the sun beats down on the floor of the forest, that carbon, the process of the carbon getting burned up and used and released back into the atmosphere speeds up massively, so that you no longer have all of that carbon stored in the floor. So the clear cutting has had a tremendous effect on the ability of our forests to store carbon. It also has a great deal of effect on water and flooding, because anytime you go into an established forest, you can see that the kind of spongy floor is holding moisture. The minute you clear cut it, any deluging rain that comes down basically runs off and makes erosion and ends up usually crossing the 201, but causing a lot of trouble to culverts and roads. So it has a rather direct actual cost for towns and for the county. The good news in Nova Scotia is that our government, the current government, ran on the pledge to protect 20% of Nova Scotia by 2030. The Liberals ran on a pledge to protect 17%. So the PCs won, and bless them, they put it into legislation pretty much immediately. Since then, it must be said they haven't done very much about it. But that pledge to protect 20% by 2030 is pretty important. As some of you know, last December, there was a meeting in Montreal that led to a global biodiversity pact in which countries, 186 countries around the world, including Canada, pledged to protect 30% by 2030. So lands and waters. So globally, it's recognized as a kind of essential strategy to do that. But you always have a question of which forests are going to get protected. And what you're seeing there is really some images that comes from Goldsmith Lake here in Annapolis County, which happens to have some wonderful old growth forest in it. But basically, the forests you most want to protect are old forests. And I'm saying old forests rather than old growth forests. We have less than 1% of old growth forests, roughly 125 years old and older in the province. We have a questionable amount of forests over 80. But those are the forests that we need to be protecting as part of that 20% if we want to rebuild old forests. And there are a lot of reasons for protecting old forests, but in a very simple way, the older the forest, the more time it's had to create kind of nooks and crannies and very diverse habitat. And that's what it allows it to support lots of different forms of life. And those forms of life also make that forest resilient. I mean, basically, the older and more complex it is, the more resilient it is against climate change, against invasive pests, against, all of the different things that are being thrown at forests. And the loss of that biodiversity, the loss of that variety of life is part of the global emergency. It's really twinned with climate breakdown. So protecting our old forests is really important to do. The figures are a little hard to come by, but these are Nova Scotia government statistics. In 1958, a quarter of Nova Scotia's forests were over 80. Using the methodology that they were using that allows us to have comparisons, by the time you get to 2003, that figure was down to 1.5%. There's some question about whether it's quite as bad as that, but it's really quite difficult to tell. The estimates range somewhere between that 1.5% and 20%, which seems like quite a big range. In either case, those are the forests we need. And if we're going to protect 20% of the province, well, it's kind of handy that there's 20% of forests, if there are that many. I don't really think there are. Most people don't think there are that many. But that's what we're looking at trying to protect. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is, although the province has made a commitment to protect 20% by 2030, they're actually quite busy approving logging of the very forests we would want to protect now. And in lots of places, when you put in a plan to protect, you actually put in a pause on any logging before you get to that deadline, so you don't have a rush to cut the forests that you will protect. That hasn't happened here. So what our campaign is saying is we would like a pause on logging in forests over 80 on Crown land until the decisions have been made about what's going to count as part of that 20%. This is a map which is a little hard to see, but this is the province's harvest plan map view, which is where the Department of Natural Resources and Renewables puts out their plans for what's going to get logged on Crown land. And we were very unhappy to see in mid-2022 that they had put out a proposal to log 464 hectares around Goldsmith Lake. Because when, I won't go back to it, but that rather terrifying map showing all of the clear cuts, there were a few little areas that hadn't really been chopped to heck yet. And the area around Goldsmith Lake is one of them. And this is sort of a classic example of what we're afraid is happening in lots of places and what we know is happening in Annapolis County, which is this move to log exactly the forests that have the most volume of timber, but also are the most valuable to protect. So this isn't about saying no to all forestry, but it is about saying no to logging forests that should be part of that protection, because we really don't have very much left. Nova Scotia has been colonized for 400 plus years. There's an estimate that the forests have essentially been removed 5 times in those 400 years. Yeah, we don't have 1,000-year-old redwoods, but we never would have had actually, because we have more of a wind. We're more prone to hurricanes. But when the settlers died, it's just the forests that they complained about being so dark and shady. They were sort of gloomy and they wished some trees would fall down so they could have some sunshine. Well, they sorted that out. Sad to say. So when we look at how we might protect some of those forests, I mean, we've been involved in a bit of a, so far successful, sort of whack-a-mole game of going in specifically at Goldsmith Lake and looking for species at risk. There are all sorts of species at risk. Lichens happen to be rather handy because they don't move. So when you find them, it's hard for the Department of Natural Resources to say, oh no, they're just traveling through, which is what they have a tendency to say about migratory birds and moose and all sorts of other things. So lichens have become our friends really in this search. Although on this map, there are also 5 now we found black ash, which are of great rarity now and also of great cultural importance to the Mi'kmaq. But most of those circles you see, and by the way, this is actually an underestimate at this point. This is October 18th. We had 2 more confirmed since then and 4 more that are off to an expert for confirmation. So we keep plugging away and exploring new areas. What these discoveries have meant right now is that all of those green areas are areas that were proposed for logging. All of the areas where we've found species at risk within the cut blocks are currently on hold. That doesn't mean they're going to stay on hold. The only thing that's legally required is for them not to cut within the buffer zones that are shown by those little circles. Those are 100 meters around the species at risk lichens and 150 around the black ash. But we are, as part of that proposal to protect 20% by 2030, there's no real process yet for groups to propose areas, but we went ahead anyway. And put in a proposal last November to protect the area pretty much that's shown on that image, the area around Goldsmith Lake. It's 3,000 and some hectares. Some of it has been cut over the years. Much of it hasn't. Pretty much any area where you try to have enough continuity that wildlife can move through, you're going to have some areas that had been clear cut 50 years ago or more recently than that sometimes. So we would really rather not have to rely on trying to find species at risk in every old forest that's cutting. There aren't enough of us, and we're not getting anything except a sort of, okay, we'll put it on hold for the moment. So what we decided that we should do is make a campaign that started here in Annapolis County back in March, when we had 180 people show up for our launch. Kind of staggering. The British Town Legion hardly knew what it did. But this is the petition that we're putting out. So we decided we would do it county by county around the whole province, but starting in Annapolis County. It's a paper petition. It doesn't bind the government to do anything, but it does, as long as it's a valid petition, the MLA has to table it. And basically, we're hoping that we will get the entire province on board. We got, I think, 2,671 or 761 signatures, whichever. For the Annapolis County one, there's one now in Kings County that was recently tabled by MLA Chris Palmer. There's one in Lunenburg County that's going to be tabled by Susan Colgan Greig. And we have people beginning to collect in Colchester, and Pictou, Yarmouth, and probably Halifax counties, and Hants. Let's not forget Hants. So what we're really asking the town to do is essentially to write a letter to Minister Holman, or actually no, to the Premier, saying we support this request. We think that this is a good idea and we would like you to pay attention to this and do it. The town of Middleton actually already sent in a very nice letter to that effect. We're not pretending that we think any of these things individually are going to make the difference, but we're willing to do the footwork county by county to just build up the voice that says, come on, you said you were going to protect 20% by 2030, and we believe you're going to do that. We know you're going to do that. But we really want you to do it in a way that's meaningful and not where you're surreptitiously undercutting it by taking away the forests that really most should be protected. Because we really need a viable ecological future in this province. And the forests have really been quite decimated by clear cutting, but also by many years before that of fires and settlement. And if we want to have a reserve of nature that's capable of reseeding and restoring some of those old forests, which Nova Scotia at this point, depending on what climate does, is really quite remarkably good at actually regrowing its forests. Not everywhere, because some places the soil is so poor they won't regrow, but we do have that ability to regenerate. And we really need to help nature do that. So, yeah. Thank you very much. If you have questions, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I've got a question. Great presentation, by the way. Thank you.
Yes.
Is the government making any promises or giving any funding to purchasing privately owned property that has old forests on it?
Yes, there's just was a recent federal provincial agreement, and the federal government funded up $28.5 million to basically get a jump start on protecting 82,500 hectares of Nova Scotia by March 2026. 82,500 is pretty much exactly a quarter of what we need to get us from where we are now, which is 13 to 14% protected to the 20%. So most of the protection is going to need to come from Crown land, right? Because we don't have to buy it back. And if all of that protection, those 330,000 hectares, came from Crown land, that would mean moving 18% more Crown land into protection than is now protected. So it's a very doable thing, but it would be great, and it is great to have funds available to buy some private land. I think some of that money will go to, there's a plan to make a public park in the Halifax area around the Birch Cove and Blue Lake. I'm sorry, I get it's one of those ones I just always remember a lot, but where some developers basically own some big chunks of land that they're waiting to get bought out, I think. So I have a suspicion that a pretty good chunk of that money is going to go there. But there is some money towards buying private. I would be surprised if more than about 1% of that 20% ended up private land, just because 1% is 55,000 hectares. It's quite a lot.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
You showed us a map with the amount of clear cut that's occurred in Annapolis County from 2001, I guess, to 2021, which was quite a bit. So my question is, we're only talking about Crown land. We want old growth forest, or at least forest that's 80 years old at least, to be saved until we get to this 20% mark. How much land are we talking about in Annapolis County?
I wish I could answer that question. I have stared at the maps and I've asked people. It's stunningly difficult to figure this out, not least because the maps aren't actually accurate. We just discovered, in fact, you're gonna hear us, a couple of us on Information Morning tomorrow morning at 6:40 talking about this. We
I'll be up, I'll be up.
discovered a 300-year-old forest
Oh,
in the peninsula that comes down into Goldsmith Lake. By kayaking to it, I noticed some big fat trunks and went, And we went back to look. On the DNR's maps, it showed as forest under 80. And Bowater's maps showed them as having cut the whole thing in 1971. So the mapping is tricky. Equally, earlier the other day, we went somewhere that shows as being perhaps over 120, and it had all been clear cut. Probably 5 years ago. So the mapping is really quite difficult to tell. I think Annapolis County and the southwest of Nova Scotia, the forestry industry sort of use it as being the last fiber basket because they've absolutely decimated most of the rest of the province. So it's possible that it's a little bit more than that 5 to 20% in Southwest Nova. I don't think it's a whole huge lot more. And certainly when you look at Annapolis County and what's left, I mean, you just draw rough circles around areas that are left. The previous head of the protected areas branch put in a proposal for 4 areas in Annapolis. One of them was Goldsmith, one was Fieldsbrook, where the last hope camp was, a couple more. Those don't come anywhere close to, probably all 4 of them might come to 10,000 hectares. I don't think as much as that. So it's going to be, it's really going to be important to save the areas that we can, especially any areas where those are connected or where they serve for wildlife connectivity. So when you look at Annapolis County, there's really a big sacrificial area between Cloud Lake Wilderness and Lambs Lake and the Medway area, and anything we can protect as what are called stepping stones for wildlife in those areas are really important. So the Bealsbrook and Goldsmith would be part of that.
Any other questions?
just one last question. Just curious, is the provincial government doing anything to combat the woolly aphid hemlock? I probably said that all wrong,
Yeah.
but you know what I'm talking
I
about.
do, the Hemlock Woolly Adelgid.
Yes.
Yes, they are, and the Medway Community Forest actually has a contract with DNR, with the provincial government to work on that.
Okay.
I don't know that it's rolling out fast enough, and I'll give you a little tiny example from Goldsmith Lake. Part of the trees that we found were these big hemlock trees. And we did a core sample on one of the smaller that's sort of 50 centimeters across. There's ones that are all the way up to 97 centimeters across. There are some huge trees in there. The woolly adelgid is there, just beginning to show up at the top of the crowns. So I wrote to the Department of Environment and said, we're willing to go in and do all the site preparation. We have somebody who's willing to, Donna Crossan is willing to come and do the injections. We need you to pony up the money for the chemicals to do this. And basically they said, well, no, we see it's Crown land and we don't want to spend any money on anywhere that isn't already protected because, and they didn't say, because we're afraid DNR will go and cut it down.
Oh, wow.
But that is the reason why they don't want to do this.
Mhm.
So what we're doing is we've contacted DNR to come in and do an old growth assessment. And they have quite an arcane system that's really quite well known for not finding old growth.
Convenience.
And they lately raised the age to 140, to 125, and anyway, we'll see. But they did make a commitment to come this fall and look at that area, because if they decide that it is old growth, then it gets something called old growth forest policy protection, and that will be enough to allow the Department of Environment to give an okay to protect.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
fingers crossed, but
So it's probably costly too to give the injections and.
it's actually, I mean, the site preparation work is takes twice as long as actually doing the injections.
Okay.
And at this point, you have to do the injections if you're within 7 meters of of a water course or the lake, which a few of these trees are. If it's further in than that, you can actually now do this basal spray, which is much, much cheaper
Okay,
and effective, but it's just, it's onto the bottom flare of the trunk. I don't think it's really money that's
no,
the issue here.
no, and you guys have did the legwork anyway.
And we'll do the legwork, and we will go in and measure the trees and mark
Yeah.
them, because we've already been in there measuring and
Yeah.
marking.
Wow.
So,
Yeah,
Mm,
Thank you.
okay.
We are gonna move up in our new business, the section on Save Our Old Forest campaign. So. You don't have to sit through the majority of the meeting.
okay. Thank you very much.
So. Oh no, there's no tab for that. We're just gonna go over the request for, I guess the request is for a letter from us, the town.
do we have,
There's not a,
Motion, that was, I didn't know what you wanted to do.
do we need a motion? The request is from the mayor.
So normally we, on something like this, we, be asked to talking to the environment committee. Because we've got this a member.
Yeah.
And they've been very good, that's who we've been using to advise the town, so we're consistent.
So we're gonna take it to them to advise us whether we're gonna write a
We
letter.
can get a copy of the letter that came from Middleton, we can see what they wrote, we can take all of that, everything we heard tonight, take it to environment committee, if that is what you would like to do.
I would, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I would recommend we do that as well, only because even if the outcome is the same in the end, that we do agree to a letter of support, it might have a bit more weight to it if it's already come through the environment committee first. And it would only be a delay of maybe a month.
It's the only environment committee in the county. really.
Right.
So,
And there are real experts that sit on that committee.
When do you guys meet?
A good question.
It's on the list of going in.
22nd.
second is our next meeting.
So then
Is that
when is
after
council?
Yeah,
15th.
it's after, so it would be on
We could just,
December's. Yeah, I was just wondering how quick you guys would like to see this letter, sooner rather than later, I assume.
Sooner rather than later is great, but
Yeah,
I think that's also, that's fine,
Yeah.
whatever works to
what do you think?
give it
yeah,
as much
no,
time.
it does make,
Go ahead.
We could refer this to the environment committee on the 22nd, and they're fine with it, we can just go ahead
Absolutely.
and do the letter after that, if that's
Yeah.
council's wish, instead of bringing it back to the
Yeah.
November.
It wouldn't have to
Yeah.
come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, you could
Um,
authorize a letter
You
ahead of
can
time.
authorize the
subject-
letter subject to,
Yeah.
the environment committee's
Right.
approval.
Is your petition online? Do you have a petition that's?
No, we didn't do
Just
it as
paper.
online, just a paper one.
And we have it.
Doesn't accept online petitions
yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right.
So you're collecting signatures in town?
everywhere.
We did.
Yeah.
The Annapolis
That's-
County
that's-
decision was tabled last week by Carmen Kerr at the legislature.
Okay.
How many,
Photographs of you guys with it.
how many more municipalities are going to be contacted and?
I think the municipality of Lunenburg, maybe George has already done, and then he's
Yes.
doing to Chester.
And then 10 in Bridgewater.
10th in Bridgewater.
And was it east or west Hants, that too?
Well, we're collecting petitions there, we haven't yet. I think somebody's collecting in both east and west.
Yeah, they're doing hands.
Yeah.
I was just gonna suggest if you wanna drop off, any of the petitions to my shop, I'm happy to have it there for people to sign.
Thank you.
Yeah,
We actually, now that we've done the tabling, we don't really need to collect petition.
oh, you're good,
However,
okay.
I bet you that we might come up with one for Goldsmith Lake.
For
So,
sure, because I've certainly never seen it or signed it.
No,
so-
me neither. That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
So. What we're gonna end up doing is send it to the environment committee. Once they approve it, the letter will just be good straight from the town in
Yeah.
support of.
Yeah, we can have it ready at the meeting and then we'll send it.
That sound
Okay.
good for everybody? We don't need a
Yeah.
motion for that.
No,
Okay,
We're good.
we're going back up to unfinished business. You guys would like to stay? Feel free. If you would like to take a moment to.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Yes.
Great presentation.
Great presentation, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The ass, I did this. This one, like, I have a trail. But how's it?
Is it?
What do you do with the show?
Okay.
Here you go.
You do?
Great.
Great trail. Walk it.
You should.
I'm not walking in there
And
till last.
honestly, they did all the way.
I know, amazing.
I'd be like, there's this big giant bear going through this, like that.
I thought they were on it first.
Percent is done.
So going back to unfinished business, request for decision, maintenance for the municipal wharf, trees.
And we have Ken here, so Ken is here to speak on this item.
Do you want me to go ahead and do the motion and then we
Yeah.
talk about it? Okay. To recommend that council approve the installation of half-height barriers and parking curbs to replace the wooden curbs that have rotten due to age.
Second for discussion.
I'll second it for discussion.
So it's in our package, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, great.
It's pretty lit.
Yeah.
Tap on the head.
So last month you asked council or
Mhm.
staff to come back and give more options. The request was for the little curb stops at the beginning of the work where there's not a large drop off. Ken has done some more research and has put together the request for decision for you, and he's here tonight to answer any questions you may have on the number of them or the.
I see them.
reasoning or-
So, the ones right at the first of the wharf are the,
On the haul up side.
yeah,
Now,
they're
I-
just these small,
Just like you can see the front of a parking space.
Yeah.
I looked at the other side as well, and the drop is higher, and at high tide, that's all underwater.
yeah.
So that didn't seem, those curbs did not seem appropriate. on that
How
other side.
high are the other ones? I know it's here somewhere.
18 inches. The half height ones are,
Yeah.
are 18 inches. The wood that's there now is 16 inches.
Oh,
So
okay,
call it just below knee height,
yeah, okay,
but 2
so,
inches higher than the existing.
okay. And they can obviously be removed if
Yeah, they're
another
just- Yeah,
plan.
because of their
comes
weight,
in,
they're just held by gravity. They're available for other uses
If
later.
need
How
be.
many are there that you're looking at on the?
It's on the thing, it's not,
It's-
it's 150 linear feet now, it was, I believe, and I'm just going to remember, I believe it was 50 linear feet. Of the curb, parking curbs, the little ones, and then the balance is the half height.
So 19 half height
Yeah.
and 8 parking curbs.
And the parking curbs don't have to be tucked in,
Just a.
far enough apart that a car can't drive between them.
Right,
So the current wheel guards, the wooden ones, you said they're how tall?
16,
16
Well-
by,
they're 12 plus they're on brackets, so
Right.
their height from the ground is 16 inches.
16. So the recommendation is the 18-inch concrete ones, so there'd be 18 plus whatever,
Not that they just be in front, so it'd be 18 inches
that'd be in
from
front.
grade.
You're not moving those behind, you just put these in front, right? Yeah.
Now, I don't see a need to remove the ones that haven't rotted completely. If you go there now, some of the ones we're talking about have actually fallen off their brackets that have split completely in half. I mean, you could just push them off. Those in my bear removal and then just, just in front of where the wooden curb used to be, place the half height barrier. Until the other ones are in that state, I think just leave them where they are.
So we don't have an installation cost for hemlock or pressure treated.
Simply because it's a little hard to estimate, because, so the way the brackets are, so you know the sides of the wharf for that riprap, like the corrugated steel. It's not in a fantastic state. If we can't find the full length hemlock, and I can talk about the fact that those are coming from old forests, and those trees have to be felled to get these, so.
10
Interesting,
months.
yeah, interesting that it
Interesting.
comes on the heels of this other presentation, but that notwithstanding. If we can't use the existing brackets, then like, let's say it's a 20-foot section and we can only find 10-foot sections of this hemlock. So then obviously we have to weld in 2 additional brackets. And the state of the riprap in all places, some places just rotted completely and they'd have to find a way to weld new steel in there. Other places they might be able to weld directly, but obviously for welding, it has to be onto clean metal. So it would be a lot of work. And generally, you estimate labor costs just as simply the same as your material cost. I would say that's a minimum, that it would be the same as the material cost, it's probably significantly more. And again, speaking with the only sawmill that could provide it, this is a standing old growth forest, or an old forest, I probably should say, that the trees have to be felled and prepared, and that's why it's a 10-month lead time for something that we're talking about.
What about,
It doesn't provide more function, it's just visually different.
what about pressure treated? The engineer said Stella,
Nobody has it at that size, except for the one mill that I was able to find, and that's actually nearby, just around it in the shop.
Do we need to be at that size? Just
You could go smaller, you could go nothing, I mean, these are choices, but if it's all going to match, it's that size. Absolutely, you could do 4x4s, right? I mean, any size you like, it's the amount of protection you desire. The current level of protection basically goes up to 16 inches, and they're very weighty, so a car hitting it wouldn't
Yes.
just break it.
The existing wooden fenders, they're attached with large carriage bolts.
Yeah.
So replacement of more wooden ones would also be carriage bolts.
That would probably describe it as.
Could you talk
Yeah.
about the cost of the welding?
Because, so there's a hole through the log, if you will.
Yeah.
The bolt goes through the top and it goes through like an L-shaped bracket at the
Right.
bottom and then a bolt underneath. So
Okay.
that the welding would be to mount these brackets.
Okay.
I'm thinking we won't get anything cheaper than this.
No, I think that's a very optimistic. So,
And what's the weight of these concrete barriers, each one?
oh, I'd say easily 1,000 pounds, but I mean, I don't know, I'd be guessing, it's just, they're 8 feet long, 18 inches high and solid concrete with steel rebar inside. They're meant to stop a car.
What's the plans for the winter maintenance on the wharf?
Dude, no changes from the past. We're probably gonna leave the floating dock in, is the intent there in terms of generally that came out in the past.
Yeah.
But the water doesn't freeze, there's no need to remove it. The bracket which hold it would need significant repair if we were going to take it out. So in the cost savings and no, there's no safety issues, we just leave the floating dock there. And then it's just normal stuff in terms of, we can't store snow on it any longer. So it's just,
Well, where we have it for pedestrians at the end, are we gonna change our maintenance to make sure that it's salted and cleared, or?
I would assume so. We could clear it. It probably wouldn't need to be salted unless it was excessively icy, but certainly we could clear it and then it's well exposed, so the sun would do a lot of melting on days that aren't inclement.
Okay, let me ask you this question. If we decided to close it off and move those barriers that we were putting in, that we're looking at now, straight across the wharf,
Easily, yeah.
and then there's no winter usage,
There can be nowhere to usage, or we could leave a pedestrian path
or
to
there's
the
no winter
end.
usage.
Absolutely, either one is achievable, yes. And those barriers can be moved at will. Can't imagine there's a lot of demand.
Well, we're opening it up for winter usage for pedestrian, you're gonna be into other risks down there than just ice and snow.
Oh, yeah, I mean, we've already heard previously an accident that had a fortunate ending, but yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I was looking today at the current setup and some of the 20-foot pieces have been replaced already.
Yeah, absolutely. I still believe it was a while ago, but
Yeah,
some are in
It has been, but they replaced.
comparatively good condition
10-foot pieces.
and the brackets were put in, absolutely.
Yeah, so was it new brackets, do you think, or because it looks like they just used Nova Scotia ingenuity and
Wait,
directly.
but it was, yeah, the bolts, as Paul was saying, the carriage bolts have to fix to something. And so, yeah, just welding in, it depends on the condition of the metal beneath it, how easy or difficult that is, but that's all it is, you just weld the bracket in and bolt through it. I'm not saying it can't be done, it's just a matter of cost, how much in terms of money are you willing to apply to it?
well, there's money and if you do one, you're only doing it for that location. You're not like you're gonna be able to move the woods.
No, that's a permanent fixture, you're absolutely right.
These options can be used elsewhere in town if we decided to do an upgrade later on.
That is correct.
Can I ask some questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
You don't have to give me the names, but how many local mills have you contacted or mills within Nova Scotia?
In Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
It's 4 or 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And these were all recommendations. I mean, it's not like I have a list of mills. This
Yeah.
was talking like the Ian
Right.
to a Bill from the shop, things like that,
Right.
you know, saying, oh, you should go. And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
even when I spoke to some of the mills, I said, who else should I call if they had, and they
Right,
didn't
okay.
respond. So I've called everyone who's been suggested to me,
Okay.
and one with conditions can supply.
Okay. Okay. And Bible Hill, that was recommended in the Able report. Was
Then
that-
yes, yeah,
They
we
were
did.
contacted as well. The engineer's report does not mention replacing it with anything other than the wood. It doesn't say concrete in the report.
Okay.
So I'm just curious, have the engineers been contacted
No, in this
with
regard.
the
Except
option of the concrete? Because I'm worried about the weight of the concrete towards the edge of the wharf.
I
What
certainly
effect that would
can,
have.
I don't think the weight is significantly different than a car parking at the edge of the wharf.
Which we're not supposed to be doing now, really.
No, well,
Further
we
down-
have, we have a bunch of spaces there, so. you can
Yeah.
Block those off if you like, but,
Down here.
oh, that, well, it's essentially the same. If we saw significant subsidence or things like that, we'd either fill it with cold patch, which we're going to do anyway, or we would make sure that it was safe to place the block there. But, you know, we've had like there at the end, you know, for a large section of summer, there was scallop dragging gear there that weighed easily as much as these concrete blocks weighed. Speaking with the engineer, when they did the public presentation, was it last summer before? He wasn't worried significantly about point loading. It was more just lots of cars being on the wharfs, especially in addition to the erosion that seemed to be occurring. So I wouldn't have significant concerns about that, but if this were to go forward, we could make it conditional upon sign off by the engineers.
So the cost of the materials is roughly the same. It's the well, no. Because it's $2,750 for the 19 half height barriers, another $1,350 for delivery, $600 for the 8 parking curbs.
And we could probably deliver those ourselves, because it's just up the road in Bridgetown.
Okay, so, and then $4,800 roughly for the hemlock plus installation, which we don't really know the cost, but potentially twice, double that. So $10,000 as opposed to
7,000 plus HST.
7,000 plus HST.
Yeah.
So we're looking at a $2,000 to $3,000 difference, possibly.
And 10 months delivery on hemlock.
And the old forest being cut down.
Yeah, we either fix it or. Yeah, to me, it's a safety issue and the sooner we get on it.
Yeah, now the rocks are obviously the lowest cost. But reading the report, it doesn't seem like they would be a good choice because of just the hazard of it not being like a conformed.
It's not essentially continuous barrier. I think the rocks would work for cars, to be fair.
Mhm.
I think they would be much less effective for people, and they might promote people climbing on the rocks.
Mhm.
And certainly we've had instances in the past where some of those size rocks, people did not see them, fell over them. Whether or not that occurs is pure speculation, but it has occurred.
Yeah.
It's fair to say.
Okay,
To go back to Emery's point about time.
Mhm.
Looking at the condition of the barriers right now.
Yeah.
The ones that are most in need of replacement are those that are closest
Yeah.
to the haul up.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
The others, you know, there is rot, obviously, there's deterioration, they're gonna need to be replaced, but it doesn't, to me, doesn't strike me as something that is pressing that we couldn't wait 10 months for. But I could be mistaken. But my big question is for that
Yeah.
first 20 feet where next to the haul up where we have a desperate need.
Mhm.
Do we have a temporary something cheap that we could temporarily do until we replace those?
I have nothing to hand. I think if we're looking for something cheap to prevent a car going over, rocks would be a very easy solution. No one parks right there. I mean, other than occasional parallel parking, but nobody parks in. Rocks could be a very easy solution there. For that, I mean, for there, we're only talking about parking curbs anyway, to
Yeah.
determine motorists, they could be driven over quite easily. So yeah, so I think rocks could easily be a cheap solution there. I just, you know, it's my job to present a little bit of a worst case scenario. I mean, if something unfortunate were to happen, the fact that several times people with informed opinions on this matter said it needs to be replacing and it's been deferred, you know, I don't think that's the best way to go. And deferral is just another way of saying I want to pay more later. You know, if we wait, it will be more expensive. That's almost guaranteed.
Yes. Go ahead.
I would just also like to say that in both of the engineer reports over the last 2 years, this has been identified as a safety issue. So it was not,
There are multiple issues that have
Yeah.
arisen that we have not addressed, that we've tried to monitor. And if something imminent seemed happening, we've taken action where we could. But at the end of the day, we need to act on these things, I think.
We're still not stopping people from going on the wharf and parking on the wharf where the parking places are. So it's just an extra bit of safety.
For me, the section at the end would be, you know, visually, it would be nicer to have a wooden barrier at the end to tie in what's there. The rest of it is we're concerned more about barriers for vehicles, or most of it's vehicles.
Yeah.
So I don't, you know, have wood or rock or the half heights. I like the idea of the half heights only because they can, as we move forward with this project, whether it can be moved out, we can do something else, there's a lot of discussion that in my mind.
It's a flexible solution, absolutely.
And I think I brought it up about what is gonna be done in the winter, what's not gonna be done in the winter, for safety reasons.
I mean,
Consideration should be given to make it, maybe we just close, we don't need it for parking.
yeah,
You know, so what are we doing with it? Like, you know, we don't have tourists in January, February, March. So maybe that's the time we just say, okay, we're gonna barrier it off, and we don't have these issues to deal with over the winter months.
it's the safest solution, and that's something we can implement in a variety of ways.
So if we were gonna consider that, and we had these barriers in place, they can easily be moved to adjust if we decide to do something differently down in the winter months.
Yeah.
That's my thoughts.
And I would just add, it's not part of this, but I would add, there's a valid argument to be made for railing at the end of the wharf, where it's no longer a working wharf, where we're inviting people to sit. I know it's been mentioned before, a deck over 2 feet has railing, at low tide, it's a 25-foot drop, and we have nothing.
Yeah.
And so whether we bear responsibility for that, it's a different discussion, it's a legal discussion. But, you know, in practical terms, it might be worth examining.
Can I just make a couple of points? So in the last engineer's report on page 13, it says the timber tire fenders are in fair condition. That was only a year ago. So I'm just curious about some of the barriers, if they're just fully rotten or just partially rotten, and can the ends just be sawn off and replaced? So do we have some cheaper options here? And do we need to send somebody down there just to take a second look? Maybe like a carpenter who is familiar with wood.
We all went down.
But
We've
I'm
been
not a
down-
carpenter.
I was
so-
down last week as well. I don't think the answer is gonna change, you know, you can't
Yeah,
take a
we've
big
been
head
at
my
it
way.
several
it's
times.
the engineers.
And yeah, we brought this back several times. And like, to me, it's kind of pressing. The staff have been advising us. We've been making them go back, which they've done. But to me, we're at the point that we should really decide what to do.
Yes.
And just the nature of the rot to address that part of it.
Yeah.
What happens is, for the ones that aren't as rotten, you can see where the first indicator is, you see the barrier splitting lengthwise. And that allows, the pressure treating is usually just a few inches in, all around the wood. Once it splits lengthwise, you see the water penetrate, and then you can see the rot in these long cracks. So they don't tend to rot like solely in the middle or solely at the ends, they tend to rot along their length. So that's how they're compromised
Right.
as well.
Well, I just want to add to that. The other thing as well, you mentioned, if we go with the concrete barriers, they're going to sit in front of the existing wooden. So it's not going to be a streamlined barrier, right? It's going to be wood and then continuing with wood and then a concrete barrier on this side. And then it's going to jog back to the wood. So it's not going to have that feel, that look that we have right now. It's going to be a mismatch. And then we're going to say, well, it's kind of a temporary fix, but we're spending money on a temporary fix. It sounds to me like the money would be spent on a permanent fix.
I didn't replace them all with concrete.
No,
It's permanent.
because then you, the whole look and feel of the wharf, it's the
That'd be
oldest,
expensive.
it's the oldest town with the oldest wharf, and now we have concrete
not the
barriers.
Well, it's not the oldest.
It's not the oldest one.
But I know it's the,
And we're not.
it's the
sitting
last
here-
wharf we
I'm
have.
not sitting here thinking how visually appealing this is going to be. This is a safety issue for one. It's a cost thing for another, and we don't know, in 2 years, we're gonna have a wharf underneath this wood that's gonna even be there. So, I mean, these are practicalities that we have to kind of consider when we're looking at this. I'm with Amy on this, like staff has stated it, it's a risk concern. So if we put these things up as a temporary solution for what we're looking at, if down the line, we're like, okay, we decided that we're gonna rebuild the wharf to what it is today, we're gonna put wooden hemlock all the way down there, it's just gonna be part of the massive budget that we're gonna need to redo it.
Millions.
But we need to look seriously about closing it off in the winter. And we need to seriously look at, well, what we're trying to do here, we're trying to stop people from going over, people are gonna climb over everything that's there right now if they wanna go on the edge. And then we have the whole question with regards to railing at the end, which is a serious question that needs to be, we should have been dealing with it beforehand, but I would say we have a window over the winter. That we look at it for our next budget for the spring. If we're gonna continue to have this area on the end of the wharf.
We're all waiting for the infrastructure report, which we don't have. That's kind of what we're in between, I guess. But I'd like to move on from the discussion over $7,000. Basically, that's where I'm at. I agree with everything you're saying, Paula, the look of the thing.
Mm.
But the problem is, anything we look at is gonna be more expensive when we don't even know about the structure and what the public want us to do. Like, we've agreed this is an issue for public discussion. We have a wharf committee. So I like the idea of what we're doing is not a permanent thing, because the wharf committee comes back with, whatever happens after the AIM report.
The
Yeah.
money wouldn't be lost.
It wouldn't be,
Those other places.
Yeah.
Which is
It's a
also really
safety.
like, yeah.
So have we consulted with the wharf committee?
well, they've been in
No.
discussions, and we've certainly heard from one
This
wharf
is
member.
a risk issue for us, for the town. They're not on for risk. This is, if we don't do something and something happens, it falls at our feet, and I am one that is very hesitant not to deal with it tonight, move forward.
And we did hear from one wharf committee member
Yeah.
that's not putting up a certain barrier, which council listened to, and, the aesthetics were considered.
Yeah.
See, I have no problem with closing the wharf in winter. If we feel that we have a current safety issue. I'm not sure if it's as bad as we're letting on, but if we feel that there is a safety issue, then close the wharf for the winter. As we've said, there's not as many tourists in town this time of year. There's certainly not as many people in town this time of year. We don't need the additional parking. So close it off. That'll put us a lot closer to our 10 months until we can have hemlock to be installed. The price difference of $2,000, quite frankly, in our budget is not, yes, we're hard pressed for money, but $2,000 is still not a lot of money. And it is a permanent, semi-permanent solution. If we buy the half-height barriers, yes, they can be used elsewhere if we decide to repair the wharf in the future. But honestly, what are we going to do with 19 half-height barriers? I don't think the town of Annapolis Royal requires those. So that's my opinion.
I think closing the wharf too, is something, if you recall what we went through with the
Mhm.
curtailment of parking. It's not something that we should just up and do as a result of a meeting. So if that's the wish of council, I would absolutely think there would need to be some discussion before that happens. Yeah. Because the public do use it, it's
Mhm.
their wharf.
Yeah.
So we'd have to at least build a piece to, rather than just up and close it.
Yeah,
I
I
would
think
think.
the closure of the wharf is a whole different conversation, and
Yeah.
that's for another day, not for the night.
Well, it would have to be this meeting or next meeting. Cause it would be no winter maintenance is what we're looking at. If you're gonna not do winter maintenance over it, then you would close it over the winter
But
period.
that's a whole other discussion. We've given no notice to the public that we're even thinking about it.
I'm not thinking.
You know, I'm just saying, you know, all these things are possible, of course, but we'd certainly have to give notice and explain why and.
And for now, it's not closed, it's opened,
Yeah.
and we allow people on there.
I think this had to do with keeping it as is, right? It's a whole other
Exactly.
discussion. We're talking about closing it off for the winter because
Yeah.
we do have groups who use it right through
Mhm.
winter.
Oh, yeah, they
Absolutely.
do, yeah.
I think we're talking about cars, though.
I know we're
Yeah.
talking about a group that uses it every morning.
Yeah,
and
it was basically-
Closing the wharf for vehicles, because I don't think we're as concerned about people falling off of the wharf, because
Well,
some of these
I guess it's
barriers
happened.
are
It
It's
happened,
happened.
it's happened
not
once.
because of the barriers being rotted.
no.
I don't think, just, I don't think because one person fell off the wharf a couple of months ago, that is factoring into this big, huge discussion.
It only takes one person.
I know. But I'm just saying, I'm not
Really got
saying
hurt.
anybody should be falling off the wharf, but this isn't why we're having this discussion.
No, I think
This is
what
more for
factors
vehicles.
into it is that staff have done their job, due diligence, they've got us back several options, we keep sending them back, at some point, we just have to make a decision.
Yeah.
When would the half-height barriers be available?
Spring, they're not, they manufacture them to order, so they're available in spring.
November, December,
Five.
January, February, March, April.
So another 5
6.
more months and then we have the wood. I say wait 5 more months and go with the wood.
Well, that would take
In
you right into
addition-
next fall. So for just to be straight, you want guys who wanna wait a whole nother season
Mhm.
to make sure that we have wood instead of some other barrier in there.
Yeah, if there's some areas where we find that it's particularly bad, a temporary barrier.
They're absolutely on now, so.
If there's some areas, you know, we discussed rocks, just in the areas where, for the interim, maybe. But I'm not sure. I've read the engineer's report. They said that the barriers are overall in fair condition, that the rotten one should be replaced. We asked for clarification as to which ones he feels should be replaced.
Yes,
And he's stated all of the ones that have been identified.
yes. That's what I, like, the whole thing started with the engineer report.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like staff just goes in and says, oh, willy-nilly, let's, you know.
Sometimes we're,
Whereabouts in the report did the engineers identify which?
It's not in the report, Paula. We've talked to the engineers have done a site visit with staff.
Oh, okay, so we don't have that information.
You have the information in the report that the barriers need to be
And
replaced.
we can meet tomorrow morning, and I can show you everyone if you like.
Okay, so did the engineers come up with these barriers? Did they specifically say these are the ones that need to be replaced?
With Ken has gone out and looked
Yeah,
at
I met
them.
them
We
out.
have gone out and looked together with Bob Rowe. We've
Yeah,
done
there's younger
that.
engineers there too. I mean, they're demonstrably, it's,
So could we go with the 10-month order plan for the Hemlock, and in the meantime, could we put boulders just on the inside edge of those rotten ones as a temporary measure for safety?
Do you have any boulders, Ken?
I would be finding,
Finding.
purchasing boulders, whatever it is, transporting them to site, and then we rent a forklift, or we might be able to do it with the backhoe, but it'd be a process.
Okay, but that is one of the options that
Yeah,
you
all the
presented.
options I think are viable, I think some are
Okay.
preferred, but all of the choices before you are viable, they wouldn't be for you otherwise.
Okay, so easily available, low cost. Okay,
So, bringing it back to the motion on the table. We have a motion to recommend the council approve the installation of half-pipe barriers and parking curb to replace the wooden curbs that have rotted due to age. I'm gonna talk about question on the motion. All those in favor? Against,
nay,
the motion is passed. All right, so now we're going back to the next. Which would be the sewage treatment plant update, tab 4.
So just bringing this to your just to update you on the information, the last page of the report actually is that was a sample of the sludge testing that can be done. But the last page there is just what staff have been working on to try and figure out what the best process is for the STP plant. The information, there's so much information. First, we thought we were gonna dig a hole and make another lagoon to store all the sludge in. We talked about desludging, we talked about enzymes, and so now staff has brought forward this I'm not sure what it's called, Ken,
Survey. I can recap.
Yes.
So before I talk about desludging process, no matter what we do, it is strongly advised that we conduct a survey for different reasons. One, it just lets us know how full the lagoons are, how much material needs to be removed. We don't know if any process is successful. If we don't have baseline data, we can't judge the change. That's the first part of that. I would like to use an enzyme solution for a variety of reasons, but an enzyme solution might not be the best for our lagoons because of the composition of the material itself. It's the difference. The sludge is made up of volatile and non-volatile solids. The enzymes only eat volatile solids. So it's that percentage that matters. So even though I might want the enzyme solution, if the composition doesn't favor it, it would be a waste of money to do. And obviously we don't want that. So we're recommending, but strongly, we do the surveys before and after, so we can see the extent of the effect. We know that the pathway which we've chosen will be effective. And so that's why, and it's a combination of a little drone and then samples throughout the lagoons that tell us the makeup and the depth of the sludge. You know, it is absolutely honest to say that these sludge lagoons have not been emptied this century. And so it is certainly time.
Deferred maintenance.
Again, and it's costing us more because it was deferred.
Yeah.
So
So where you gonna move the sludge to?
Depends.
Yes, it depends. If we do the enzyme solution and there's an asterisk there, you don't move it anywhere. The bacteria eat it. And what is left is essentially dirt and it settles. And you can, again, if conditions favor, you can do that entirely. And then maybe at some point farther down the road, you might have to scoop out the dirt.
Right.
The enzymes are nice because they do that, there's nothing to store, and they get rid of the smell very, very quickly, even though they work more slowly overall. If we mechanically dredge the lagoons, then we would have to dig a third lagoon to dump the spoil into, and then it just dewaters itself through evaporation and draining through the soil. You get the smell for a lot longer,
Right.
but it's
It's the
faster.
dirt, yeah.
Yeah, it smells bad for a long time, but it's a much faster process, but much more expensive.
Yeah.
What kind of time frame are you talking? You saying much faster, months, weeks?
Yeah, the digging of the new lagoon is probably just a couple months, and then the dredging process is just a couple weeks. But then the dewatering process is probably couple of years, just going through, and it's smelling better over time, but it's the smellier of the two. And that's not the only way to desludge a lagoon. I have spoken to everybody about this, trust me. Oh my God, I know so much about poop. So the enzymes, again, if conditions favor it, the enzymes and the way they're administered, they actually clean all of our lift stations. We treat them in one lagoon, and that carries over automatically to the second lagoon. So in a way, you're getting, for the lower price, you're sludging both lagoons and cleaning the lift stations as well.
Right.
So there's a lot in its favor, but it has to be the right solution for you.
So when you say the smell, if we start the process of the enzyme, for example, now, we're getting into the winter months anyway, where you haven't got the.
Yeah, and even if
Smell.
enzymes are right for us.
Right,
We would
yes,
start with
okay.
a small dose now that just kind of gets them brewing and putting them in, we have to stir the lagoon up to distribute them. So there's a little bit of smell, but as you say, we don't do much over winter.
Yeah.
Smell is not an issue over
No.
winter. When it goes again for the big doses in spring over a 2-week period, there'll be some smell as we have to
Yeah.
pump them through the lagoons. But then they start eating it right away and the smell goes
Yeah.
away right quickly.
Okay.
So
Good.
what would make it not suitable for us?
If the percentage of non-volatile solids are very high compared to the volatile solids, so basically it's stuff that the enzymes can't eat. And if it's mostly that or a very large percent, it shouldn't be, but should is not really a
But the
scientific word.
drawings are good. They said where the aeration was good in the ponds, it was dissipating. But you could see in the areas where it wasn't aerating, that's where the crust forms.
Yeah, exactly, and I've spoken to, I mean, without getting too much into the solutions, I've spoken to other municipalities that have used it. I've spoken to other municipalities who have done desludging different ways, you know, I've sought other opinions, it's not just the vendor's material, certainly.
Yeah.
No. But the initial thing for the update is survey. We have, and for the survey, I'm waiting for the final quote from third vendor. There's the enzyme vendor has recommended a survey company. As someone they've worked with and they trust and provides good solutions, but I've sought others. Once I get that final price, we'll make the decision. Yeah. As per procurement policy.
Awesome.
Going into the treatment process, is there anything residents of our town can do differently to take to lessen the capacity of the
More fiber.
system? No, what I mean is the quantity of, and what I'm getting at is years and years and years ago, there was a push for town to redirect sumps to go into the
Yeah, so
storm drain, not the sewer.
it's a slightly
right? Because of
different
the
issue,
Capacity.
but
right?
yeah,
That's what I'm
so,
getting at.
and there was a push, so no basement sump
Mm,
should ever empty into a sanitary line because it just overwhelms our system.
exactly.
Yeah, we're
And-
separating water. That was
Yeah,
the-
and we absolutely have an issue somewhere in town, which we are still chasing, where storm drains are getting into it. So when we have a heavy rainstorm, we have 2 lift stations especially that come very close to getting overwhelmed, depending on the severity of rain and things like that. So we've been doing dye tests, we're still chasing that issue. The bigger issue, I think, right now where we have issues, and we assume it's restaurants, but we don't know for sure, and we've sent out letters to the restaurant, I hand delivered letters, it's fats going
Right.
down the drain.
Yeah.
They go into lift stations, they cling to the walls, they
Right.
clog it, they gum up the works, they're a mess. If we do enzymes, part of when we administer, we actually drop, they come in a little bag, we drop them in the lift stations and then start to clean the lift stations and they clean the whole
Oh,
system from
flushing
the
it
lift station.
through,
Yeah, and we can do that anyway, just to keep our systems healthy, even if we mechanically dredge. We can have a regime where we're cleaning the lift stations with enzymes and that keeps our lagoons nice and healthy as well. So in terms of
Yeah,
if there is a restaurant that's dumping fats and I could not find one and I spoke and I viewed some grease traps and all that, that would be very bad. And certainly people pouring fats down their sinks, things like
Yeah,
that,
no, that's not
horrible,
right.
or down your toilet, anything like
Yeah.
that.
yeah,
Absolutely. So, but I don't think the sump issue
right,
would help. And if somebody knows, they should
yeah,
do that. But right now, that's not gonna solve it for us. This is
Okay.
just years and years
Yeah,
of deferred
yeah.
maintenance. And so.
Yeah.
okay.
Any further questions for Ken?
No, but could we get a copy of this survey without all the blackouts?
It's not
Oh,
us.
see, that's not
Oh, isn't
ours.
it?
That's
No.
not us.
So that's a sample survey, so it's been
So you
anonymized.
see what, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
That's not our survey.
okay,
actually, you're
That's
not
why
allowed,
it's
you're
been
not
flagged.
cleared for that now.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's very
classified,
detailed,
right,
yeah.
okay, that makes sense,
No, so that's just an anonymized other municipality
Yeah.
survey.
So you know what you're gonna get.
Yeah.
right,
Say it's obviously very.
They have a nice marina.
But
Yeah.
when we do it.
It's
I
like,
said,
oh, look at that.
Funny, because we're talking about food.
Yeah.
You will get it.
okay, perfect. Wow.
Okay,
It's like.
thank you, Ken, for the update.
That's a quick learning curve.
Oh. Okay.
Annapolis.
Thanks,
And-
Ken.
Ken,
Thank you.
you like sticking around for the rest of it?
Yeah.
No, it's gonna be good.
Listen, this is the high one.
When we're talking poop, it's the high one.
Right?
Okay, the Annapolis County Intermunicipal Working Group update.
Well, we had a great meeting.
Nice.
We have 3 separate sets of recommendations coming from the CAO committee. So the CAO committee work group meet, then we meet.
Okay.
So council will see three separate sets of recommendations, one on housing, one on economic development, and the third one's escaping me.
Recreation.
Recreation.
Hmm,
So these are high-level recommendations, so you get the report. It was just done before this meeting, so it'll come to you at council.
nice.
So but it's a lot of work. One thing the town did request was, we increase the number of meetings because the workload is just being
Yeah.
too much.
It's probably like 12 to 15 hours a month that I spend on top of everything else. And I'll just also say that we have all agreed to send a letter to the minister asking for funding for a capacity grant on all 3 units, so we can,
For water and
for
sewer.
water and sewer,
Okay.
how many more, like the pushes for housing. So can all of our infrastructure handle more housing
How much?
and working
Yeah.
together and stuff like that? So that will also be, one of the, attachments for next.
But it was another really good meeting, I have to say. Right? We thought it was
I agree with that.
And I have also submitted the application for the joint, climate capacity person.
And if
For
that
the
doesn't
3
work,
units.
there's another application so if we don't get that one, the applications are coming out encouraging partnership.
Okay, is that the same, sort of, thing we had last year with, the climate?
It's from,
Intern?
it's from Clean Foundation again. And it would be a grant for all 3 units to do one climate change action plan
Hmm,
and then have appendices for each different unit.
yeah,
So
that's great. I
Oh,
hope that
I'm
was
so
successful.
Throwing stuff around.
Okay, any further questions?
Mhm.
Then we're on to new business. We're on to the second item, which is request a decision final tax. Town properties, that'd be tab 5. There's a motion in your draft motions. If I could have that placed, we can have a discussion.
Okay, to recommend to council to write off roll 000923998 and roll 04997409 final taxes in the amounts of $680.85 and $2,465.60 respectively for the town of Annapolis Royal.
I'll second.
Okay, discussion.
And this is for the fire department and no?
that's unlimited.
King's.
That's unlimited in Kings, yes, okay, yeah. This was double checking.
Further discussion on those 2 items? Question on the motion? All those in favor? Against, motion is carried. And we are now on a point to join board of police commission, tab 6. There is a motion in your draft motion.
I recommend to council that Paul Kellogg be appointed to the Board of Police Commissioners, term ending December 31st, 2024.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on the motion?
No, it's a short turnaround, it's only like.
No, we did 2024.
Oh, 20, yes, yes.
So we tie in at the end.
That makes sense, okay, sorry, I didn't see that before.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, that's great,
he's got a great resume.
yeah. Mhm.
Any more discussion? None, question on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Against, motion is carried. And request for date on the final report on seawall.
Yes, so the Ames group have reached out to me and are looking for council to pick a date for a second public hearing for the week of November 20th. I am going to request that we do it on Thursday. That's the best night that works for me, but
The 23rd?
yes. But it's up to council.
Yeah, for me.
I think I have a library board meeting that night. I think.
I'm away that week, but you can have it with it, you know,
That's the only week that they're available,
exactly.
so.
No,
Then let's do it on the 23rd. Those of us that can make it, and those.
Yeah.
that Unfortunately, I have appointments and
The other day would be Monday, and if Monday works for the group.
the
Mondays are
20th.
bad enough as it is. Let's just do it on Thursday.
So what
That's
time would
my
it be?
thoughts. Monday,
Six
I would
o'clock.
prefer either
Six.
Monday or Thursday.
yeah.
Yeah, whatever time, six, if six is
Six,
good.
I would say.
Well, that's what they have, that's what's there.
I think that's the perfect time.
Is it gonna be held here anyway?
Well, we'll do, once again, we'll do a register, so
Yeah.
we know how many people are coming. We'll take out all the tables like we did last time,
Mm,
and I think we had like 30
it
some
was-
people
yeah, it was packed,
in the
Mhm.
room.
yeah,
And it
And
was
so
good.
if
was
we
a good
have more registered than that, then we would go
Yeah.
to the hub,
okay,
but usually. And that's the same for the meeting tonight, we asked how many people were coming,
Yeah.
so we made arrangements and.
Yeah. okay, yeah, great.
Okay,
So if we just can have a motion.
okay.
There's in your package.
To recommend to council that have a, to recommend to council that have the second, that doesn't really make sense, I have to say. To recommend to council to hold a second public meeting on the seawall for November 23rd at 6 P.M.
And that should be sea wall.
Is it seawall or seawalk?
Wall.
It's wall, I said wall, but I think I said wall, didn't I?
It's wall,
say
you
wall.
said it, you said it right,
Seawalk is kind of nice.
A seawall.
Can I have a second for the motion, please?
yes.
Further discussion? Question on the motion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Against, the motion is passed. And then we speak back.
I didn't even notice.
Update on housing needs assessment report, tab 7.
Right. Yeah,
Well, we had a little bit of discussion on this on Monday,
yeah.
and I think we need to respond to this report.
What's wrong with the reform?
Did you see what they estimate we need in this town?
Was it 30?
No.
No, it was like 100. it
Like
was-
120.
Yeah, it was over 100.
So you figured, tell me where we're gonna get 100 units in this town. There are 60.
Yeah.
Put up an 8-story building. Have a nice view. Get your store.
Yeah, it doesn't, there's just really no way we could ever make that happen. I don't see.
It's not our responsibility anyway, though. is
No,
it?
it's not. It's just a report, but it gets, Other people will read this down the line.
Our needs.
That's
Be
what
like,
I was
why-
saying, how
The
did they determine?
methodology is
Yeah.
in the report, I've read it cover to cover.
And there was a
We got
survey.
an advanced copy, we've all had it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I saw no basis personally to challenge the report, but if people who know better have something to say, then they need to put something in writing and back it up. But to me, it was just illustrating, of course, we know there's a housing issue in the province.
Mm,
So, I mean, yes, the town could go after the report, but it's just a report sitting there. It's not like we don't have development plans, we sure do.
But
So-
nothing on the scale that they're suggesting.
But if somebody wants to put paper to, I saw nothing in it that I could object to, or, as to whether or not it's possible, whatever, I've left it for others. But there's a report, we used it for the updated strategic plan, so if somebody has an issue with the numbers, then, any one of us can do the research and send it off. Run it by council, and so if somebody wants to do some work on it, but I saw nothing in it that I could.
You're suggesting that the numbers are okay with what they're suggesting?
No, I'm saying that's the report that came in from the province. And so, I recommended, or when Sandy and I looked at it, we plugged that information in, plus the source, because it wasn't the town's report. This is simply to say, here's what a provincial report has said, and we left it sitting there. Didn't mean we had to do anything with it, we didn't think so. We referenced it to say it says that we need to build all this housing.
Go ahead.
I also say, last week at the AMANS conference, a number of municipalities were talking about the report. And it was the saying that they didn't feel the reports were satisfactory or up to date. But they were also told that do your own report if you don't like ours.
okay.
So it's kind of one of those things that the province needed the housing report so they could use it for their announcement last week on the housing needs and how they're going to address it, so,
Okay.
So then if our other municipality using this report as part of their assessment of the town, like we put that in our strategic plan.
Yeah, well, a lot of them don't have strategic plans. We're a rarity in that
but
we
it-
not only have one, we update it.
But if it's not a reasonable plan, why are we
Who
acknowledging
says
it?
it's not a reasonable plan? You see, that's the issue. Do we spend all of our energy working on a report for what return when we've
No.
got lots of stuff?
I'm not
to
saying
do?
we have to work to say, do our own report, just, when you look at the numbers that they're suggesting for this community. It's a little, to me, why acknowledge it if it's not even a reasonable number for this community?
Cause it's a provincial report.
There's plenty of
it's like
provincial
Stats
reports that
Can.
I wouldn't put.
It's
in
like
a
Stats
strategic
Can.
plan.
Stats Can come in. I hear people arguing those numbers all the time, but guess what? Stats Can said it, that goes in the report, and we can all argue about it. When WCB came out with their figures, the town went after them. We said, why are you calling us this? We're an outlier. We admit we're an outlier, and they conceded the point. They said, well, it won't be fixed in the near future, but they took our point that what we were saying was right. Will that change? Who knows, right? So when we see something that's really glaring, if somebody wants to do the work, I mean.
I don't
we
think we need
protested
to
things.
redo a report. I just think that we shouldn't be acknowledging the report, maybe on our strategic plan, if it's not
Well,
even reasonable for our numbers for this community.
well, who's saying they're not reasonable? I have not seen the argument against. I'm not questioning, but somebody would have to convince me as one person that this is completely out of line. But when I read it, I took it that, yeah, we need more housing across the province. I see the county making great strides. The county alone could resolve our housing issue.
Not
Like,
our housing issue, they
Yeah,
can resolve
yeah,
the housing issue
no,
in the
no.
surrounding county,
they
but
can
when they
resolve it
state.
for the town.
that-
They're right on our borders.
If-
So, anyway, I couldn't see anything that would warrant me making an extra effort other than acknowledging there's a report, that's what it says.
The report contains a lot of useful information. The recommendation for the amount of housing that's required, while may be true that we could use that much housing here in Annapolis Royal. Geographically, there's some major changes. It's probably not feasible. Whether we want to put in the effort of notifying the province of that, I don't know if there's any benefit for it.
I'm not suggesting that when you notify the province of it, I'm suggesting that we don't use their data within our own strategic plans. It's pretty hard to suggest that we need to look at putting this number of housing in an area that you can't put that number of housing into. That's what I'm suggesting.
Could we put that number into our strategic plan?
We basically put in the reference from the report, we summarized the report under housing, exactly, and we plugged it in without question, put it in and stated the reference.
And as a weakness.
Yes, because housing's a weakness in our years, people can't find housing.
Well, housing is a weakness in our immediate area. Housing is not a weakness in the town, you can't build any more housing.
I suggest we leave strategic planning to our strategic planning meeting.
Well,
That would be my
this is
suggestion.
where this report come up. And this is the concern that I have with this report, is that we're using it to create a weakness to this community, which I don't think is substantiated.
Well, you're one person, you're entitled to your opinion, and if people want to do some work on this and do something, something that we should write into the province about, I'm all for that.
But you just said you weren't in.
No,
favor
no,
of
but
writing
somebody
the
would
province.
have to simply put, it's not enough for me to just, we have a provincial report. Usually if we disagree with something, we agree on the points that we don't agree on and we write a letter to somebody. Now, maybe we're there, but I don't sense that we're there. But I could be wrong.
Okay, so at the strategic meeting, we were gonna discuss the report, and now we're at the report, and you want us to go back to the strategic meeting and discuss it there.
No, we're just dealing with facts, Michael. It's simply statistics kind of says this, we put it in. The housing report says this. If we object, we can plug that into the strategic plan. We can, all we were doing is producing a report that conveys to the public the information that we're given. If we want to make a statement that we don't agree with this, then somebody needs to do the homework and put that statement together. It doesn't have to be a big statement. But it could simply be, well, we don't agree with this, or that's fine. But somebody needs to put some work behind it, at least think about it and give us something.
I read the report and I'm fine with it. It's just a snapshot. There's great facts in there, you know. I don't see I don't see we'll be able to build 60 new units.
I don't
I
either.
just don't see how that's going to be, but it's just the report. So I'm fine with it.
You have to say the development across from the fire hall.
Except for the
It's going to
sailing
add
club.
50.
There you go, yeah, there you go.
So we're moving in the right direction,
Yes,
possibly.
yeah.
All right, moving on. Community partners, community check-in, health fair, Annapolis Royal, November the 8th, participation required.
So in your agenda package is the poster that's gone out. It is a drop-in from 11 to 1 and 4 to 6. When we met with the department head at ACHC, they picked a date when our council was not meeting so that we could have council representation. They've also asked us if we wanted to do a booth. I will be away at NSFM that week, so I told them that we would not have a booth set up at the fire hall, so
So you say a drop in, it's
it's just a drop in, there's no
Okay.
presentation,
Okay.
you just can talk to the I'm not sure who's even in attendance from ACHC, but it is the year anniversary, it's been open for a year, the UTC.
Mhm.
So I'm sure they're gonna have some stats and some information available for the public, and if any public have any questions about the UTC and how it's working, the walk-ins or the phone calls, they should go and let their voice be heard.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll be
there. Give my feedback. Because it says we would like to hear about your experience.
So.
So that's
break
just,
for the month.
Yes.
just there for information.
Now, what are they going to do? Gather this information up and then submit it to the provincial contest?
No, I think
For
we
the
gave-
$1,000.
For the $1,000.
Oh, yes, I actually gotta send something in. I thought it was a good idea.
I thought, I wasn't sure that was
Tell me.
actually a real thing when I read it, but there we
But I
are.
think what we're trying to do is get people to use the complaint
Mhm.
line.
Yes.
Mhm.
So we published that for a reason.
Mhm.
So people have actually, this is what happens. Anecdotes get raised at every meeting, which gets us nowhere,
Right.
which is a complete waste of time.
Mm.
They need data, and we did clarify where to go and how to, so we printed that and prior to people, if you have a horror story, here's
Right.
where you report
Yes.
it. And if there's something good, because some people will counter, then by all means, let them know. So
Mhm.
we're trying to direct people, rather than save them all up. No, report it at the time it happens.
Yeah.
So that there's a file open. So
Mhm.
they've given us, at least we got that far. We got the points of access clarified.
Yes.
But if we don't document, everybody saves up their story. Guess what happens at every time we have a public meeting, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Trying to avoid that.
Yeah,
Yeah. No, it's a good point.
yeah, well, I'm gonna go.
Okay. Moving on, council's appointments, tab 9. And there are.
I'm doing it.
Draft,
It's
okay.
done. Put it in my briefcase. It's good.
I guess we'll have to start with-
Okay, and we're just gonna go around the room?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, to recommend to council to appoint deputy mayor, Michael Tompkins and Councillor Paul Weir to the audit committee until October 31st, 2024.
I'll second it.
We are,
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Before we go through the motions, no, are we asking each councillor if they actually want to stay on the committees? Or are we just going to make the assumption
Yeah,
and
we
go
have
through the
a split
motions?
second to say no.
Well, I guess, yeah, after we read it, then I
Okay.
guess if anybody doesn't wanna be, this
But
would be.
it's true, the history of this group has been, everybody, it's kind of a rubber stamp procedure. I have
It
to say,
is.
that's the way it's been.
Yeah.
If you want to change that,
Do you want
But
to?
we all got
go on the
notice.
audit committee?
we all got notice of the motions.
Only meets 3 times a year.
That's a bonus, but no.
No,
Usually every 2 years is when we come and
Yes.
see which, if
That's
you
right.
wanna switch.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is the second year of your term. so
Exactly.
That's why we didn't
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Oh,
makes
that's true
sense.
too. Okay.
No, I'm happy with mine. I'm just speaking generally. for
No,
everybody
but
else.
I'll put the question out there. Next one, Environmental Advisory Committee.
And we'll just go right
Can
around.
somebody make that motion because it involves me, so.
I will,
Thank you.
unless you want to. Marie.
No, I think I've got to clarify what the rules are, but since I'm not used to not chairing the meetings, I know when I'm chairing them, I can't make a motion.
Yeah.
So I'm not unsure of my status, and I thought I could look it up quickly in the rules,
I
but I
think you're
can't.
Oh,
fine.
you're good.
Only the
Yeah,
chair
only
is not.
chair cannot make
Oh,
motions, yeah.
Okay, good. So I'm not chairing this, so to recommend to council to appoint Paula Hafting to the Environment Advisory Committee until October 31st, 2024. Mover,
I'll second.
the seconder rather.
Oh,
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
To recommend to council to appoint deputy mayor Michael Tompkins and councillor Holly Sanford to the marketing and economic development committee until October 31st, 2024.
I'll second that.
Fine with it.
Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm great.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We'll get the mayor to read
Yeah.
this next
keep
one.
reading the next one.
I move to recommend to council the appointment of councillor Holly Sanford and councillor Paula Hafting to the Planning and Heritage Advisory Committee until October 31st, 2024.
I'll second that.
All good?
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye. I recommend to council to appoint Merv Amory Boye to the Accessibility Committee until October 31st, 2024.
I'll
Sorry,
second.
not acceptable.
You've been waiting to say that. Yeah, I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, to recommend to council to appoint councillor Holly Sanford and deputy mayor Michael Tompkins to the board of police commissioners committee until October 31st, 2024.
I'll second that.
It should be board, police commissioner board, it's not a committee,
Oh, board.
The Board of Police Commissioners.
board of police commissioners.
I would know.
My motion.
But no, yeah,
And I'm good with that.
good.
All those in favor?
Aye. Okay, I'll recommend to council to appoint Deputy Mayor Michael Tompkins and Councillor Paul Weir to the Traffic Flow Advisory Committee until October 31st, 2024.
I'll second that.
Done with that. All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll move to recommend council to appoint, oh no, sorry, that would be appointing myself, can't do it.
I'll do that. I recommend to council to appoint Mayor Amory Boye and alternate deputy mayor Michael Tompkins until. No, this is for the IMSA.
Yeah.
To the IMSA until October 31st, 2024.
Seconder?
I'll second.
All good?
Yeah.
Amy?
Yeah.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Can't do the next one either. Sorry,
What am I recommending that you would be appointed? to?
I don't know why.
I don't know.
It's-
Annapolis County Intermunicipal Working Group.
Oh,
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, an ACI.
This is it's a tough one. It's a really tough one.
To recommend to council that to appoint Mayor Emery Boye and Deputy Mayor Michael Tompkins to the,
Annapolis County
It's
Intermunicipal
the working
Working
group.
Group.
what she said, until October 31st, 2024.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I think they were calling it Team Annapolis because they suggested a name, but I don't think they've officially adopted it.
Okay,
That they need something more user
well, that's
friendly.
yeah,
Because the public will sure be confused. What is that?
yeah, it's a lot.
Nova Scotia 2030 Clean Power Plan,
Oh, yeah, that was a
the letter.
big report.
That's basically just for information, and it will also be on the environment agenda.
Oh, I was gonna
Yeah.
ask you that.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Okay. And then, the addition to the agenda is the discussing on the letter about the closing of the
Yeah.
Bank of Nova Scotia.
I highly recommend it.
I'm glad this is on the agenda.
Yeah,
Um,
I'm not sure.
Who are we writing to?
Yeah, that was what I was wondering. Who do we write to in this case? Do we?
Have we heard of other municipal units writing? Has there been other political pushes elsewhere yet?
So we have talked to Carmen Kerr, on the issue, and he has brought it, or he is working on it as well. I'm not sure if he has wrote a letter or he has encouraged people to write their own letters. But we have been asked by a couple residents if council would write a letter to the bank to ask them to change their mind and not close our branch. And so it's here for your decision.
I see the regulatory body for banks. If you write to them when your bank branch is closing, they will have a public meeting.
Definitely that.
Hmm.
I think we should write one to the province.
Mhm.
That would be either to break through.
Carmen.
Or directly to the. Head of
So we could write to the VP of the Atlantic region for Scotiabank. We could write to the CEO in Toronto. And there's also an escalated customer concerns hotline as well that people could call. So
I
not
think
the,
the first thing though is
the regulator.
the message.
right, yes.
So what grounds are you gonna invoke? Because, you know, there's business case out there, so somebody's going to have to do some research into what the tenant's response would be.
Mhm.
And there are precedents for bank closures in other areas, which Carmen referenced. You know, what has happened in other areas, so some work needs to be done on before the
Yeah.
town can respond. It just needs somebody to do the legwork.
I think that it's challenging for the demographics in our town. We have a lot of seniors who rely on in-person banking. And we have businesses as well that have cash floats. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why the restructuring and the push to go online from the bank's point of view isn't going to work for our town,
Demographics is a huge issue.
you know?
And we just happen to have a report that indicates our age is,
Yeah,
average age was.
and they're, often not comfortable with online banking. Even if they do some, they still want that.
Well, and then the
Interaction.
closest branch to here is also closing,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So then also you're forcing your customers to go to either Digby or you're going into Kingston.
We're dealing with the other bank.
Middle, or dealing with the other.
Yeah, we do have another bank.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it drives people to go to another town. And once they're there, they're gonna get their groceries, they're gonna do their shopping, they're gonna have their lunch. And then they're gonna go home. And it's a huge loss for our town. You're gonna feel the effects in all the businesses in town.
Just speaking of the branch, I have to go in at least once a week. And it is always busy.
Yeah,
I always have to wait.
me too.
So there is obviously a demand for the service that's being provided by that particular branch. And what you're raising, Holly, are totally.
And there's talk, and this is just talk, rumors that the Royal Bank is next to close. I don't know if
The
that.
rumors went out, but as you know, on
Exactly,
Facebook, they did have it wrong.
yes.
Cause I was contacted and I told
Okay.
them, no, they confused because 2 branches are closing. They
Yes.
interpreted that as being 2 branches and that got chased down.
Yeah,
I don't mind doing some work on it if people want to send in their comments and whatever, but I don't
Yeah.
mind doing some work and drafting something for council to consider.
okay, so send
So
comments
if you
to
can
you.
send your comments through in terms of what the public are telling you, how it's going to disadvantage them.
We put something on our Facebook to have a public response. This is kind of actually one of the things where the Facebook could be useful.
Well,
But then you
except
have-
that, no.
Staff time that can't manage,
And
right?
I'll send you some comments. I mean, it doesn't hurt to try, I don't see a letter being a disadvantage.
No, I think it's.
It's a
just putting-
supporting,
Making a thoughtful reply.
You know,
Housing.
supporting small business, and we're also, you know, they talk about the 15-minute walkable towns and how we're not supposed to be driving everywhere. We should be, you know, doing our grocery shopping and our banking in our town, and then now we can't. And I don't know the exact percentage, but I had heard 75% of businesses bank at that town, at that particular bank. Which, you know, they're either gonna have to,
Mhm.
like, again, go to Digby for their float
No,
or to do deposits.
it's not
That's,
practical.
that's not practical. You could support the other bank because you don't wanna lose that one, you know, you could say, okay, I'm gonna go there. But
The issue
it's
there-
still nice in town to have two banks and two grocery stores and, you
Yes.
know, it's, anyway,
But the
I'll send
concern-
comments.
The concern with the Royal Bank is that I also bank there
Mhm.
and it's never busy.
Yeah. 'Cause I do
So
have to
if
do
any
that.
branches were to
Manually.
close, you would expect that to be closing. And how long do we go before
Well,
that one's
except-
closed
except-
as well?
The case for Scotiabank was on their financial, their poor performance, the poorest performance of any of the Canadian banks. That says a whole lot.
Wow.
So
You know-
that's the business decision.
Well, unfortunately, it's just gonna get worse, isn't it? Because the people now, the Royal Bank is saying they're getting people coming over and opening their accounts and transferring everything across because they don't want to be going to Digby or outside of their own town. So it's gonna hurt the Scotiabank more in the
Yeah.
end.
Oh,
From
yeah,
these closures.
yeah. And yeah, I do, I feel bad for the, you know, people that don't do any online banking. I've had many elderly people say they're just gonna take their money out and put it underneath their mattress.
Well, we're losing
That's
what, half a
right.
dozen jobs,
Yeah,
just people that,
7 or 8.
that live either around us or in town.
Mm.
and Scotiabank supports fundraising initiatives for our students,
Mm.
like amazing.
Yeah,
They
day of
do-
service.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah,
They've
I
been
mean,
great.
sad to lose that too. I mean, it's.
I mean, cost wise, I can't see that branch being a huge cost for they must be in the black with that one, you know what I mean, like, it's not.
And they've even
Um,
reduced
they
their
weren't.
hours.
They won't.
This branch?
No, and that's why. There's a solid business case for, it was based on performance. But it doesn't mean we shouldn't write a letter and
Right.
describe the impact.
The impact to the economic vitalness and
And we can talk to Carmen about, because he's got experience with his colleagues of bank closures in other areas and what did they do and
Yeah.
like, you know, what. Is there any upside for the town and whatever, because they do have assets in the town.
Yeah,
to take the pressure off staff, obviously, that's a good point, Sandy. What if we encourage people that we know in the town to contact us and we'll compile all of the comments and then send them to Boyer, and that way it streamlines it
mhm.
a little bit.
Or they could send their own letters to the
Yeah,
the address that we talked
Absolutely.
about earlier,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yeah,
one
because
letter
there is
from
a
the
campaign
town,
out there
Right,
now,
yes.
to write a letter writing
Maybe put
campaign.
those
Okay.
addresses up.
one letter from the town.
Yeah.
But multiple letters from
This
individuals
area,
will
okay.
have just as much weight, right?
Yeah.
And
Because
that
I,
is there out on Facebook with address information.
Could we put that on our town's Facebook page, the links to all of the addresses, emails, but
I'll have to look at our policy, but we
Okay.
can definitely put it on our website,
right,
because that would fall in under our website policies.
okay,
But I'll have to review the
Yeah.
Facebook policy,
okay,
just to make sure that I'm not, you
yeah,
know, in any violation of that.
violation, yeah,
But we can definitely put it on on the
Okay.
website.
great. Okay, good. Scary times.
So action going forward, you're going
I'm
to
gonna
send
send
your
Amy
comments
my
to.
comments.
Yeah, send,
Everything you've
Mayor.
heard so far and
Yeah.
then try to draft something and then get it out to every member of council for
Yeah.
your comments.
okay,
And we'll talk again to Carmen Kurt.
Yeah.
okay,
Agreed?
yes.
Yeah,
And I know Daniela was wondering if there's anything the marketing committee should do.
It's on the agenda.
So that's on the
For-
agenda, so
14.
that's good because that'll be addressing a business perspective.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
Should we put the addresses of where these letters should go on our webpage?
Yeah, that's, yes, Sandy's gonna look into seeing if we can do that.
I can definitely put it on the website and I'll just check
Okay.
the Facebook and then if I will do it, I'll.
Yeah, it's the more,
More going in, the better.
yeah,
Correspondence, Annapolis Wharf Community, Annapolis Wharf Community Committee letter.
did you need us to look at the draft one that you drafted
So
or the
I
one?
attempted a draft
Yeah.
report. I can understand where there is confusion because the town has got 3 projects that overlap. 3 that involve the wharf.
Yeah.
So first of all, we've got engineering with the wharf itself, which is last year's inspection, this year's.
Mhm.
That's a different project from the AIM seawall project. But the engineers from AIM were notified of the proposal from the committee about, alternatives for the wharf.
Mhm.
And the problem is they haven't reported yet. We've been waiting for the report, so that's why I drafted this up,
Mhm.
just to say we, unfortunately, we still don't have that report, which
Yeah.
is the one that we need about, they're looking at this other option.
Yeah.
And then we have a third report, and what was the third one, Sandy? There's 3 engineering reports. One was the seawall, one was the wharf.
Able engineering.
Oh, no, the third one, but thank you, it was AIM again on our total infrastructure.
Right.
So no, confusing, we have 3 different
That one.
engineering studies
Flood
going
risk and
on.
adaptation,
That's just one.
that's just
Yeah,
one,
That's just one.
that's just one.
So it's 3 different projects, so I understand, so, when I was talking to Sandy, the reason for the second report was, it's a year later, was recommended we have annual inspections. All it was an inspection report, but Able Engineering were just doing the inspection. They're not responsible for the future of the wharf, so it's very confusing. So I tried to keep it simple in the response,
Yeah,
just to say we're still waiting for the report on the option that was presented.
yeah,
Okay,
But I can understand why it would be confusing. All of a sudden you have another work report and it's not mentioning anything of the committee's work.
yeah, yeah.
And,
I think you made it clear, like,
And then this is, tonight we picked the meeting date for the second public meeting.
right,
so now we know it's the 23rd, we
So
can
we can-
communicate that.
Date.
yeah,
And also they would like to meet with the engineers, so I'm sure we can, well, as we say in here, I'm sure we can arrange that at the time they come.
so the public hearing is gonna be on what day?
November
Third.
23rd.
Should amend the
We just
letter
did
to
third.
reflect
November
that.
23rd, yeah.
Yeah, well, you actually have it in there,
Uh,
looking at the week of November
Yeah, but we can
23rd.
say it's.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's
on
actually-
November is looking at, okay, has
Yeah.
set. November
Set the
3rd,
date
yeah.
for, yeah.
Okay, November.
So the committee, the wharf committee, they were speaking about the Able engineering report, though, were they not?
Mhm.
Yes, because that was they were responding to the original report, but Able did not have the contract to look at the seawall and what will happen with the wharf report.
Yeah, but wasn't the committee asking, they requested in January, from my understanding of their letter, to speak with the engineer from Able Engineering, when they were conducting their assessment of the war.
That's not what we were talking about. No, the assessment that we sent went to the people who are tasked with the seawall. So the wharf was specifically excluded from the first report because of this, because they hadn't had time to look at it. So the first report we received from Atlantic Infrastructure Management Network specifically had a clause in it that excluded the wharf because of the recommendation of the wharf committee. We're waiting for the report that includes the recommendation they've done, but it's late, very late coming in. We won't get it till November.
So the wharf committee, community wharf committee, sent a proposal that we draw a rock wall on the
The west side
okay, yeah, that side.
and the
Of
north.
putting rocks all around the one side and the end to protect it. So that was submitted to the Atlantic Infrastructure Management Network to see if it's vital, or if it could be done, because we were told that the Department of Environment would not approve that many rocks being on the floor of the ground now because of the footprint being changed. So they're looking at that and going to include it in the report when we get it in December. Well, they're coming in they're coming November 23rd to do a presentation to the public, and then we'll have the final report on either December council or committee.
I'm gonna miss that.
The able report was simply the condition of the work. They were
Yes.
not tasked with anything else. They were not tasked with evaluating.
But
options.
was that, whether mistakenly or not, was that not who the wharf committee wanted to meet with?
I have no idea because that's not who we tasked with the future of the wharf.
Yes,
So
but
that was a different contract completely. The future of the wharf is with the it's with a different engineering firm.
Okay.
It's separate from an annual inspection.
does the committee understand that?
That's why we're sending. a
Because I
letter.
read that letter and I don't understand that still.
Well, I can go at it and redraft.
I think initially the wharf committee was formed with the understanding that they would be kind of involved and consulted along the way
Right.
with various plans, looking at all the options, public input, and that kind of thing. And I
Right.
think
We
may-
haven't got that far yet.
no, but I think even with the barriers, I know that we had received a letter from the one of the members of the wharf committee about the barriers, like they hadn't been talked to about it, like they had
So
opinions.
we
and-
have a January report on the
Right.
results of the meeting we had with them.
Yes,
They presented us a concept. We
Right,
told
they
them
did.
we were sending it to the engineers, we
Right.
were working on the seawall.
Yeah.
And I included in here what happened with
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And we are still waiting for the report.
Yeah.
Basically, that's it. The inspection report just happened as a matter of course with the town's engineers.
Mm,
The two don't fit together because they were giving us an assessment, basically, of its
Mm.
condition a year later.
right,
So I don't think we can confuse, there are three different, there's a lot of
Yeah.
engineering going on, there's more than three reports.
mm,
I think it's really important we keep things within. This was a consideration of this option, which is why with the first report, they didn't refer to it because they hadn't had time to
yeah,
consider it. Unfortunately, the timing is, they're late with the report. We should have had it months ago. We still don't have it.
yeah, yeah. I understand that. I understand the timeline and the reports and how it all meshes together and everything, but just generally moving forward, we sit around this table and we discuss safety options, for example. Wouldn't it be a nice idea to have members of the wharf committee here that are on the ground, experienced people with the wharf to share ideas, to give their opinions, to help, to guide
I'm not running
us?
safety issues through a committee.
We're not running it through the committee, we're asking for public feedback, for
Well, that's-
information, for consulting with people who know about the wharf, who used
mean,
to
we-
look after the wharf.
Move beyond that one now, that's.
No, that's just an example.
But I mean. I don't see where, that's not what they were there for.
Okay,
They were there to look at options to save, protect the existing structure. Nothing beyond that, as far as I was concerned on what they're forming for. Maybe mistaken, but that
Well,
was,
the committee was very interested in the future of the war.
right,
yes,
So that anything, absolutely anything affecting the future of the war.
right,
So that was the original,
which ties in with the look and feel of the wharf as well.
yeah.
Okay.
It's what's going to be permanently done. So
Right.
but so far operational fixes weren't part of that.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. I just don't see there's no damage done just by asking for people's opinions and just to talk openly with local experts.
Ken did mention tonight that he's talked to Ian.
Okay. Okay,
we're going backwards here and we're going to go forward. And going forward is going to the last correspondence.
Oh, sorry, if I need to make this clear, I'll redraft.
Oh,
I think that, if you look at the third paragraph where he says, you've indicated that our recommendation and supporting documentation would be made available to the engineers the town hired to do a structural assessment and condition report. So that's the report that the engineer they're referring to. And they feel that they should have been advised of their presence here in town. They are not probably privy to these other engineers who are involved with our infrastructure reports or our seawall reports. This is what they were asking about. And I think at
But the
least
structural-
making it clear to them that there's other things that are taking place, but it has to make reference to this at the very beginning, I think.
Well, the people who are also in charge of the larger infrastructure report is the Atlantic Infrastructure Management Network. So that's the larger study, which is evaluating all of our assets.
Yeah,
Except for water.
and making it clear to them that
Yeah.
that is another group that has been involved. And
No,
that
no,
we've shared the
It's the same
information
group,
with them.
it's the same group. So
Okay,
AIM is
but a
the
different
same-
report.
It's the same group for two reports, yes. So all the structural stuff is with AIM. That's who's dealing with what we build. Yeah. Anyway,
So you
if
like
I need
do
to
that
make
in
it
the
clear, I
draft?
will.
So,
And what about the request for further discussion with council on this matter?
Certainly.
Is it just going to be the letter, or are we going to extend an invitation if they wish?
might be wise to have it after the meeting, the public meeting on the 23rd, and then
Yeah.
come in after that, because that would be the most updated moment for everybody.
And that's when the engineers come, that's when they'll have an option to talk to them. Like, I think that's the idea, is they will be able to have their own discussion with the engineers.
Yeah, that'll be good. For clarity.
Are we scheduling a meeting with the engineers? Or are they,
No, I
we have
have,
the option to ask the questions at the public meeting?
I have not scheduled a meeting with them for that. The Ames group have asked for a public meeting date that week, and that's all that's been scheduled, or will be scheduled. If anything else is in addition to, then I need to know.
So in the letter, I was saying the wharf committee will have an opportunity to talk to him on this visit. So, yeah. So I was thinking
The same
probably,
as everybody else's public.
well, or
schedule
separate.
schedule-
Yeah.
schedule a meeting?
I wasn't thinking, especially in the context of public meeting, like if they're coming here.
Yeah,
Something
and I
like
don't know
that.
how much time they have, right? Like, I have no
Well, we
idea
can
what
find
the
out.
meeting is.
We can find out. Yeah, okay. But yes, I'll redraft.
So, we're all good with the Annapolis Board Community Committee at the moment? We'll wait for the redraft and maybe see if they got some time to fit, general. Rocks on the boardwalk, tab 12.
They seem to be diminishing. Yes, actually, and I think it's because we've had some wind recently, so that's what happens. It is more of a natural occurrence. I know constructing them isn't, but as winds come and rain and there's some down already. And there's more up, I mean, they come and go. But by spring, I would say, in the past few years, they're pretty much all gone. And then it gets built back up.
So taking those little rocks, those what I would call the filler rock.
Yeah.
Taking those little filler rocks and making a little formation on top of the larger boulders,
Mhm.
does that actually diminish the strength of the armor rock wall?
Are you
I
asking?
mean, no, in general, does it? No, not
So
yet.
I'm gonna say no, but I'm
I'm
not.
gonna say that as
I
well.
feel it's not. I know
Yeah.
that some people say it's kind of like graffiti. To me, it's fun. I think it's fine. And you're
I
right,
do
it gets
too.
blown over
Oh,
by
it
the high
does, like-
water. And it's just.
Like it just comes and
I
goes.
think
You
it's
know?
a man-made armor rock wall
Yeah,
that people are taking filler rocks, doing a little bit of,
And that
artwork.
shoots kind of.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
and it gets blown over and it'll be gone by spring anyway, the winter storm. It's not a hazard to anybody. So
No.
somebody's thinking, yes,
Okay.
sorry, yes.
I will just let you know that we do get a number of complaints saying that it is environmental pollution. And that is not what an induction is for.
No, you
No.
shouldn't call them that.
No,
They're
we
just,
shouldn't call
How-
them
how's
that.
this
No,
cost
but,
us environmental pollution?
but I'm just relaying the information that I have received here at town hall on a number of occasions. That there are a number of people that do not like seeing those on the rocks, and this is just another.
Well, there's
place that
others
has
that
come in.
find it fun.
Just telling you all the information that I
right,
received.
and there's probably
Thank you.
I mean, it's,
no way to police.
I could go down and put a cart in the sand and say 2023 Annapolis Royal. Is that environmental pollution?
Mhm.
No, because it's not much like.
And these will get,
And these rocks will crumble. And they will fall back and somebody will come along and move them back. I think that's,
It's been ongoing for quite a few years and yeah, they come and go. And
I like them.
I don't dislike them. I like them. I'm always quite impressed by some of them.
It's cultural expropriation.
That's a stretch too.
Hmm,
Cultural.
I don't think it's Inuit who are putting out.
No,
those.
no.
I used the wrong word, I shouldn't have said that word.
I
Yeah.
don't
But
think they're- I don't, so,
No, they're not, but they're little structures,
yeah,
little building block structures that.
Some of them are, look nothing like an example
No.
of an Inuk show. Some of them look like.
We
houses.
can't be sending public works to tear these down.
No.
I'm not particularly fond of them myself,
Mhm.
and I question whether they should be there, but the idea of having employees take them down is like, there's better things for me to be doing.
so we read the letter,
Yeah,
we discussed it.
Yeah,
thank you.
So according to my agenda roundtable. Starting with the employee,
And not
and you,
Give
You've
them
got your
written
report,
report.
yeah.
and myself. I. Other than having 192 people at Halloween there last night, and it was.
full chocolate bars.
It's been, there's been a quiet month. So I will do it at that.
Okay, I attended the North American Conquer Championships, held at the Gardens a couple of weekends ago. And I stayed for the very moving tribute to the late Peter Davies. In attendance were 3 other town criers from up the valley. And many people spoke, and it was very moving. And I'm looking forward to the AWAC Senior Boys Provincial Championships this weekend in Halifax. Yes, they have gotten through again,
Yay.
twice in a row, 2 years in a row. So good luck to the boys. And that's my round table.
Okay, the only thing I have, in case people haven't heard, because it just got launched today, Nova Scotia government has expanded their access to free virtual care to all Nova Scotians. It's
Oh,
free
that's good.
across the table. So even if you, because before they offered it to people that were on the list, they had to be on the list to get a doctor.
Mm.
Now it's even people that have doctors. If you need to log on and get help, it's 100% free.
Great.
That is really big, good news. I do have, never mind.
Can you do things like prescriptions and stuff on there?
Yes.
Can you send us a link to the information about that?
Yes, I can.
That'd be good.
No, it's very good for our province, and they'll send that prescription anywhere in the world.
Yeah.
So if you was in Mexico and you slipped on a rock, you could log on, get on, and they would send it to the nearest drugstore. Yeah,
Can you do prescription refills on that too?
yes, you can, which would have saved you. that
Well,
day.
because they gave me an appointment at the urgent treatment
Just-
centre for a prescription refill, which took the place of somebody that would have actually have needed urgent treatment.
Yeah.
But that was the only way they processed me, was to do it that way.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it didn't make sense to me at the time, but I just went along with the flow of it all, and I thought this doesn't.
No,
Feel
that's,
right.
that's silly, yeah,
So I could have done it virtually.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Now
now,
you can.
But not.
But when
Yeah.
you did it, you did it.
2
You
days
could-
ago.
Oh, pardon me, you could have done it before, but it would have cost you like $65. Now it's free. It's free to everyone in the province.
Well, it's a step in the
Wow.
right direction.
Yeah,
that's good news.
that's really
Very
good
good.
news. Yeah,
Thank you, Holly.
yeah.
Council
Thank
here.
my daughter.
I was invited to attend the Friends of the Library in Apples Library, their last meeting. I think they rescheduled it just to fit my schedule.
Wow, that's nice.
Gave them, answered their questions. Will say that I'm very impressed with the new sign that they put
Oh,
up
I love
with
it.
the
Oh,
assistance of our
fantastic.
Public Works
Yeah.
Department.
Yeah,
I think it is very important for people who are using our hub and the library, of course. The academy had, I think, well over 200 people, kids who came last night to Halloween. Positive
good one.
note. And a negative note, I hear that the Board of Trade is disbanding.
Yes.
And I'm very saddened to hear that, because I think it has an important role to play with them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bad.
We are now going to go in camera, so I need a motion to go into camera and we're. And we're going to talk about,